Hello everyone, this is David Stearns from Haley Marketing and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. Today I am very pleased to be presenting a whirlwind recap of Staffing World 2015. On the call today we've got Brad, Kelly, Maggie, Ryan, Paula, and myself. Those are 6 of the 8 people that we brought to Staffing World this year. Unfortunately, Vicki and Rick could not join us. Vicki is our Chief Operating Officer and also my partner in running Haley Marketing Group, and Rick is our Chief Technology Officer, but they were good enough to share some insights about the things that they did while at Staffing World because they spent some specific time talking to technology vendors, so we have a unique perspective in that regard as well. Before we jump into the presentation, I just want to give everybody a heads up. We have a lot of content today. I know we're scheduled to go from 2 to 3 o'clock Eastern. However, I can almost guarantee we're going to go over by probably at least 15 to 20 minutes. So if you have to run out because you have another appointment, we totally understand. We are recording today's webinar, and it will be added to the Lunch with Haley website by early next week. Also, along the way today, if you have questions, comments, feedback, please feel free to join the conversation with our team on Twitter. Just use the hashtag #LunchWithHaley, and our social media team is waiting to engage with you. All right, so let's jump right in. Staffing World, it was a phenomenal event this year in Nashville. As always, the educational content was incredible. The networking was fantastic, and the nightlife was a lot of fun too, but I don't think we're getting into too much detail there. We would like to start with the opening keynotes, and actually before the opening keynotes, some introductory words that came from Richard Walchrist, the President and CEO of the American Staffing Association. So Brad, would you mind recapping what Richard had to say?
Thanks so much, David. Yeah, Richard always starts off every conference with an overview of the staffing industry, how things have performed over the last year, and then kind of sets a tone for the event. So this year he talked about the successes that were happening over the last year, and one success is the staffing penetration rate. It's at its highest level ever. But unfortunately, that level is only 2%. So there's room for growth. And one thing that he talked about as is a driver of growth is getting out there and telling our story as an industry. So staffing firms do amazing things. In fact, over the past year, the staffing industry created more new jobs than any other industry. That's a great story, and that's something that we need to get out there and tell if we're going to grow that penetration rate. And Richard, throughout the conference a few times, showed a video that ASA put together that helps tell that story, and that video is available for all ASA members to use and help to tell that story. Then Richard went on to share a great story about North America's top HD TV manufacturer, Vizio. And what they've done is truly remarkable. So they've created one of the top performing HD televisions out there. Their sales outpace every one of their competitors, and they've offered this outstanding product and outstanding service at the lowest possible cost. So how'd they do it? Well, they did it with the staffing industry. So 90% of Vizio's workforce is contingent labor. They had revenue of $3 billion using 90% contingent labor. They only have about 200 to 300 full-time people on board at any given time. It's amazing how they've been able to create a competitive advantage, offer a superior product, and offer one of the lowest costs, all because of the work that the staffing industry is doing. Great, great story, and more of us need to be telling those stories. Another great insight that we found at Richard's presentation was generated by attendees there. So throughout the presentation, there are a lot of polls that people could complete using their phone. And I apologize for the grainy picture here, but really this was about revenue growth. So Richard asked everybody in the room, tell us how your revenue this year compares to last year. And what was great to see is that 85% of attendees at Staffing World this year reported that they've seen an increase in revenue growth over the previous year. But even more shocking is that bottom line, option E. So 26% of people in the room said that their revenues grew more than 20% over the last year. That's absolutely amazing. And if you consider that the temp penetration rate's only 2%, just imagine how much growth we could have if we just increase that by 1 percentage point or even a fraction of a percentage point. And what Richard really was driving home is that as we begin to tell our story and share successes, we're going to see that penetration rate increase. More people are going to use staffing services. There'll be a bigger pie, and all of us will benefit from that. So some really encouraging statistics. David, why don't you take us on to the next keynote?
Will do. And some of you may know this presenter. It was Stephen Dubner, who is co-author of the book Freakonomics. And Stephen's overall message was that success in the business world requires unconventional ways of thinking and problem solving. And what he talked to us about is that how disruption is occurring in every industry in various ways, and the consequences of change are incredibly hard to predict. Now, Stephen, if you've ever read his books, you know that he comes to amazing conclusions from crazy stories. So when talking about disruption, he talked about the U.S. demand for turkey and the fact that we now consume so much turkey that we're demanding that farmers find a way to raise turkeys that have more white meat, bigger breasts. Well, that's led to an unplanned consequence in that the turkeys they're raising now have breasts that are so large that they can no longer mate. So that has created an entire industry of artificial insemination for turkeys. And Stephen's point in telling this story, which is an absolutely crazy story, is just that as you look at changes going on in the staffing industry or in industries that are affected by staffing, it's very hard to know what the end consequence will be, but you can be an observer to find opportunity. In the case of turkeys, we actually have a client down in Virginia that provides temps to do turkey insemination. Another thing that Stephen talked about was creating incentives that really drive people to do things the way you want them to do it. And he said predicting the incentives that are going to work is as hard as predicting the future. There's no crystal ball for incentives. He said you put together a sales compensation plan thinking that the incentives are going to motivate a certain behavior, only to find that you left a hole in the system and they don't motivate that behavior. And what Stephen says, the only solution is to really get great data where you measure and monitor what people actually do. Stephen told a very funny story about hand washing in hospitals and how when they surveyed doctors, 75% plus said, yes, they regularly wash their hands. And then when they observed the doctors in the restrooms, only 13% were washing their hands after going to the bathroom. Disgusting, yes, but scarier because it's a hospital. So in order to design proper incentives, you need data that reflects reality. In terms of becoming a problem solver, you need to find ways to redefine problems so you can eliminate artificial barriers. And the story that Stephen told was about Takayu Kobayashi, who became a champion hot dog eater. Now, up until Takayu entered the contest, most people would put a hot dog in a bun, shove the thing in their mouth, and eat as fast as they can. And in the time limit they're given, which is 10 or 12 minutes, most people could eat 20 to 24 hot dogs, was a world record. Takayu studied the process, and he said, the challenge isn't to go faster. My problem isn't how fast I can go. My problem is, how am I eating? And Takayu said, if I separate the hot dog from the bun, maybe I can go faster. And then he discovered that buns and hot dogs have different consistencies, so they're hard to eat. So if he wets the bun, it gives it a consistency more like the hot dog, and he could eat the two together. And now if you watch the Nathan's Challenge every 4th of July, you'll see every contestant separates the bun from the hot dog and soaks the buns in water because they were able to get their input, hot dog eating, from mid-20s to mid-50s in the same time period because they redefined the problem. The problem wasn't how fast can we go. The problem was how do we approach the process. So while Stephen's presentation had nothing to do with staffing, if you think about the disruption that's occurring in our industry from technology, from regulation, from the pressures of outside influences, particularly the labor market, if you think about how do we predict the incentives that will drive our clients and our salespeople, and you think about how we solve problems, we can apply the lessons of turkey insemination and hand washing and hot dog eating to make our businesses even more successful. And our next keynote presentation was Jim Clifton, the CEO of Gallup. So Maggie, would you walk us through this one?
Thanks, David. So in this keynote, Jim Clifton discussed the importance of engaged relationships. The way to achieve sustainable organic growth is to have an engaged workforce. So how do we create an engaged workforce? We focus on what motivates our employees and promotes job satisfaction. Clifton explained with the millennial generation, motivators go far beyond just a paycheck. The top motivators include having a purpose, having high job satisfaction where people want to feel that they are making a difference and have a true impact on goals and the bottom line. And they also have to believe that the company cares about you and your professional growth. He also noted the importance of understanding strengths and weaknesses. And while weaknesses aren't necessarily something that can be fixed, you can focus on employees' strengths to truly help them develop infinitely. David, I'll pass it back to you for the next keynote.
Thanks. I actually want to comment on Jim's presentation. There's actually a discussion this morning in ASA Central where the owner of a small staffing company was talking about the challenges of sort of reprimanding and disciplining their staff in a very small organization for the things they were doing wrong. And this directly ties to Jim's presentation, which in this particular company, if you read into the situation, the people who were not performing didn't want to do very mundane tasks because they had a small team and sort of everybody has to wear every hat. This organization would probably be better off finding ways to analyze and play to the individual's strengths to promote the things they do well to accomplish more rather than worrying about disciplining them for what they're doing wrong and focusing on the weaknesses. And I heard a follow-up presentation that Jim did, and he talked about managing his workforce and really that it took him time to learn that, but the key to his success as a CEO was learning how to identify the strengths of his workers and create opportunities where they could put those strengths to use. All right, and then finally, in terms of keynotes, this is really weird for us. We always have somebody at all the keynotes. There are always 3 keynotes plus Richard. Well, this year, we were taking down the booth, and everybody looked at each other and said, oh no, we're missing the last keynote. So in preparation for today's event, we said, well, how could we get information about the keynote if we weren't there? Well, we're big believers in social media, so I went out to Twitter and I said, let's see what people said. And there were some great comments about the keynote by Seth Madison. And I just have some quotes that people tweeted that sort of summarize Seth's presentation. So we're in an area of unprecedented access to information, exponential reach, and hyper immediacy. Basically what we have so much access to data, to information, and people want such fast results, it needs to change the way we communicate internally and with our clients. As organizations, we need to provide people with better access to more information. Numbers alone don't drive people to action. Information isn't just the data, it's the stories. As Brad mentioned earlier, telling the stories about our industry, making people see themselves as staffing professionals, either inside your organization as an internal recruiter or salesperson, or as a temporary employer. In terms of exponential reach, everything that we say can be immediately broadcast anywhere in the world. So we have to be really cautious about how we share information because everything we don't want exposed is going to get exposed. And we have to be much more cautious about what we share and where we share it. And finally, in terms of hyper immediacy, it's the, if you remember from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, it's the Veruca, I want it now. So how do we fulfill the employees' demand and our clients' demand for I want it now? How do we provide better data, faster service so that we can drive results faster for the people we work with, because that's the key to success in today's workplace. 2 takeaway lessons that came from Twitter. Sometimes we show up least for the people who matter most because we're so distracted. We need to unplug and be living in the moment. And as Seth said, he talked about being more intentional about every minute of every day and being present in our jobs and in our personal relationships and in our professional relationships to help build a more responsive, higher service organization that can survive in today's world of information, exponential reach, and hyper immediacy. And by the way, again, that all came from Twitter. All right, now let's go to some of the breakout sessions. So let's jump into some of the roundtables. Maggie.
Thanks, David. So roundtables were a great way to have a more personal discussion with a group of people. Some of the most common questions asked in the Twitter roundtable were how to organize the company's social pages for the profile of individual recruiters. A common theme was to have a marketing team to manage their corporate accounts and then have individual recruiters managing their own profiles while still representing the company and its brand. One recommendation here is to utilize the company pages as the jumping point. The content shared here is easily accessible, and individual team members can share this content on their own social profile. Another main part of the discussion was about measuring Twitter success. And many people discuss about, well, it's helpful to have analytics and be able to A/B test for what type of content is most successful and when it's most successful. Engagement is not the only focus of Twitter. It's a channel for accessing talent and reaching out to potential candidates directly to engage with them and to gauge interest in potential job opportunities. Going right along with that, we also found that when discussing your Twitter following, it's important to realize that it's not necessarily the number of followers that are the most important, but the quality of the people you are communicating with on Twitter. And finally, focusing on posting jobs on Twitter, there were a lot of questions about the best way to post jobs. And depending on your company, you may choose to have one Twitter account to represent your business, or some select to create a second account for only their job posting. And truly, both options work and just depend on your level of use. The life of a tweet is only a few seconds long. Since this platform is used for news, people scroll quickly through feeds, and those feeds continue to fill, pushing content down. As a result of this, you can post more content and jobs on this network than any other social platform. I do say that with a word of caution, though. Spamming your followers with 10 job postings in an hour tends to be overwhelming and can result in someone unfollowing your update. Then, moving on to our next roundtable session, this was about dealing with difficult clients. And the key to this discussion was how firms define a difficult client and how they define clients that are not a good fit for a partnership. For example, recruiters who have experienced issues with clients that have failed to follow safety or onboarding practices at any point may not be a good partner, and those are clients they are not choosing to do business with in the future for the safety of the candidates they are placing. Overall, they decided that challenging clients are the ones who may require extra attention for a variety of reasons. Some of the most common ways to overcome these challenges include forming a strong partnership between clients and recruiters, staying up to date with business changes and knowing the company culture, and also asking for regular feedback on the success of placement. The key to overcoming these challenges is relationship nurturing. The goal of relationship nurturing is to get the client invested in your services and make your staffing services an integral part of their business. If you are looking for help with relationship nurturing, content marketing is a great strategy for this. You can use blogging, newsletters, and even skill marketing candidates to stay top of mind and provide great resources to help integrate yourself in your client's business processes. And the third roundtable session I was able to attend really focused on benchmarking data and determining ROI. And this focused around what metrics are valuable and the best ways to gather data. Everyone overwhelmingly agreed that data is vital to evaluating ROI, and a lot of the conversations focused around correlating the ROI of an individual recruiter's activity. Everyone in the session had different ways of assigning value to the many activities performed weekly by a recruiter and the value level each activity provides in terms of ROI. The other part of this discussion focused around salary data and the metrics used to educate both clients and candidates on the fair rates for talent in specific industries, positions, and locations, and the value of providing this education to your clients and candidates. And we did discuss that one of the great resources for doing this is actually using the ASA information. They provide a ton of data every year about salaries and trends, and using this information to educate your clients and candidates is a great resource and a great place to start. Now I will turn it over to Paula to discuss another roundtable session.
Thanks, Maggie. Also, roundtables are a great way to explore the industry's most pressing business and operational questions in order to gain practical solutions from your peers. I had the great opportunity to moderate a roundtable called Marketing Strategies and Techniques. As the facilitator, my goal was to kick off the introductions and then moderate discussions for 30 minutes, and then welcome a new group at the table for the next session. Participants were able to choose from more than 25 roundtable topics, and each topic was broken into 3 20-minute sessions. So I was really pleasantly surprised that our table had more participants than seats available, but we got them in there and we had a great time. As you all know, The candidate shortage is something the staffing industry as a whole has been experiencing for quite a while now. And the hot topic of discussion in all of the 3 sessions was how do we maximize or optimize our recruiting efforts. And a few suggestions that came out of the groups I'd like to share with you. One was to make sure that you're posting your open jobs on social media and making sure to focus on the correct platform to do this, such as Twitter, select jobs on Facebook, Google+, and LinkedIn were all 3 that you should be focusing on. Then also focusing on LinkedIn, making sure that you become an industry thought leader, share content in groups, focus on groups where you can find new talent, such as local colleges or community groups. This is working well for quite a the members of the session. Make sure you're offering referral bonuses. Make that job more desirable that someone can pass on to a friend. Pay-per-click marketing is another option. Facebook campaigns can be a great way to market directly to your target candidates. And then optimizing your job posts. The challenge, since candidates are getting harder to find and traditional recruiting methods are no longer as effective as they once were, you've got to find new strategies to increase response. I think some ideas that came out of the group, make sure that you make your job really desirable. Focus on what you can offer to the candidate, not on what the candidate can offer you. Make sure you rethink your strategy on job posts and define your ideal candidate in your posts. Sell that opportunity. Tell why it is a great job. Be upfront about pay and benefits. Post with great rates, with pay rates, get more response and more qualified responses. Hopefully this will give you at least a few ideas to rethink those job postings. Up next, Maggie's going to talk a little bit more about roundtable sessions.
And Paula, hang on, I'd like to jump in for just a second, or Maggie, let me put you on hold for just a second. We also met someone at our booth when talking about recruiting through social media, and she had a strategy of being incredibly active on Facebook. In her local community, relatively small town in Texas, she had built up a following of 10,500 people who had liked her profile. Now, anytime she needs to hire, she said Facebook has become her #1 source to fill positions. She's eliminated her other spending because she has such a strong local Facebook following. Now, if you're in a larger organization with offices in all kinds of places, that technique's probably not going to work for you. But if you have a very strong presence in one market, another way to leverage social media is build a big following and then share jobs organically. Great way to recruit at little to no cost. All right, with that plug in, Maggie.
Thanks, David. So the next session I want to discuss was Women in Leadership with Loretta Penn. I had the pleasure of attending this session, and it was really informative. And I think one important key factor to remember is that while this discussion was about women in leadership, it is certainly focused on leadership, and all of these takeaways are applicable to both men and women. So some of the key takeaways from this presentation were LP's LPs, which are Loretta Penn's learning principles. And I won't read all of these to you from the screen, but I believe the points are a good reminder for everyone in their career. And one point I'd like to specifically focus on is to do better at the things you already do well. Just because you're great at something doesn't mean you can't improve upon this. And her recommendation here was to get a coach. This isn't the same thing as a mentor. A mentor is someone maybe you work with and can help you solve individual situations. But with a coach, you want an impartial career coach with only your best interests in mind, and someone who's completely removed from your day-to-day operations. This is a great way to help you develop in your career. Additionally, Loretta asked us a few key questions through the presentation, and one that I thought was a great takeaway for everyone to consider is, do you want to be a leader, or do you think you should want to be a leader? And this is a really important question in helping you plan your career path. As you can see on the slide here, we have a few different statistics about the number of women in leadership positions. You can see 4.6% of Fortune 500 companies have women CEOs, while 52% of the American workforce is women, and 2.3% of women execs express an interest in CEO positions. So you can see there is a little discrepancy here. And she noted that in order for us to see more female CEOs, we will need to see the number of women in the workforce and those expressing interest in CEO positions increase. Now I will turn this over to Kelly.
Thanks, Maggie. And One of the common themes that we saw throughout Staffing World this year was the war for internal talent. This is actually an ASA initiative. The video that Brad mentioned earlier is available for any ASA members, and it is used as a tool for recruiting internally. And this particular session was it was a panel discussion led by Haley Marketing client Robin Mee. Robin was joined by representatives from Milner & Associates, Elwood, and Higher Dynamics. They're three very different size firms, but they have similar techniques on how to attract people to the staffing industry and to be recruiters in their firm. One of the common themes for all of the panel representatives were that good people internally will attract good candidates. We already heard Maggie talk about the millennials, but one of the main themes is how do you appeal to the millennials? And one way to do it is through your company culture. Higher Dynamics uses a YouTube video that created their own song that gives candidates a glimpse into their culture. Other ways are to partner with Junior Achievement or to appeal to millennials' desire to control their own career path. Even further, you can develop a college recruiting plan by going beyond job fairs and working directly with deans at business schools and career services to work with candidates and college students in those areas, and also develop an internship program. Elwood talked about their management training programs, which is a fast-track program that allows candidates and their new recruits to actually fast-track to a clear career path to a branch manager within 12 to 18 months. And one of the biggest things they talked about is engagement and retention of current employees. A few ways to do this are through mentor and training programs, similar to the management training program I just mentioned. Getting your senior staff involved actually also invigorates your senior staff. It doesn't just attract new candidates. Milner & Associates talked about their Strength Finders initiatives where they work with people's strengths, not how to improve their weaknesses, but identify and work with their current employees' strengths. Other ideas were service awards at the 3, 5, and 10-year marks, referral programs, again, good people know good people, invest in leadership programs, and really encourage your internal team to get involved in the community. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ryan.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Had the pleasure of attending the Recruiting in the Age of Social. It was delivered by Jerry Renaud. He's the new SVP of Marketing at TrueBlue. And he started by talking about how recruiting is the last thing you should worry about. So here are the 4 things that he really spent a lot of time on talking about what you should be worrying about instead. Number 1, how are you making your customers and workers feel? You know, people remember the way that you make them feel long after they forget the details of everything else. And that's how they feel about you, your organization, and your brand. In 2014, Career Builder said that less than 1 in 4 candidates trust staffing firms. And you know, with this, every touch point is an opportunity to make an impression. So just think about the touch points from A to Z of where your candidates and clients are seeing you out there. Second, hello, are you there? And what Jerry's talking about here is being where your clients and candidates are, where your audience is. It's really important to understand the impact of mobile on your clients and candidates. 71% of candidates have performed a job search on mobile, and 25% of those who make less than $35,000 a year only have their smartphone for internet access. So think about who your target candidate audience is and the importance of being in front of them there and what their experience is like, particularly searching and applying for jobs. So, you know, with those numbers, it's no surprise that Jerry reported by far the most important thing that TrueBlue did in the last couple of years was to get their jobs published in the right way on their website and optimize those jobs for the candidate experience using mobile. Third here, do you know where Waldo is? So he's pointing to communication. It has to match what the candidate prefers. You have to meet them where they are, and so talking about text, calls, email, SMS text messages are getting opened 98% of the time. And he reported that 90% of those who signed up for special offers by text said that they got great value from doing so when they were polled. Lastly, on social, he shared that 47% of online time, total online time, is spent on social media sites. Businesses that use social media as a part of their planned corporate marketing strategy are 1.5 to 2 times more likely to anticipate revenue growth than ad hoc. And social, nice part is it's one-to-many, not one-to-one. It can be one-to-one in some cases, but you can really build your social brand by connecting with your customers and having everyone else see that connection. TrueBlue reported that when they analyzed their efforts on social, specific to driving candidates to apply, they actually were not seeing any measurable results, but they were building awareness, and there's certainly value to that. And I found this really interesting. An audience member, when that was brought up, they asked a great question about whether that involved Facebook-sponsored efforts. And Dottie, their brand strategist at TrueBlue, she was up there. She actually confirmed that it hadn't. I spoke with that staffing owner afterward, and she confirmed that by spending $20 to sponsor certain jobs on Facebook, they were actually seeing great results with over 1,000 views and close to 100 applications from a recent effort. And my personal takeaway from that I'll share here, know your Waldo, because your target audience is different depending on where and who you staff. So in this case, not every Waldo is wearing red stripes and a hat. Back to you, Kelly.
Yep, thanks, Ryan. The next session that I'm going to present on, I'm actually really happy to bring to you. Again, it was a Haley marketing client, Jason Leverant at Work, and I apologize, I am going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but it's Miss in Place, your staffing firm. This is a philosophy that I've actually adapted the past few years myself. I used to pride myself on being a great multitasker, but at the end of the day, I would look around and not really be very productive. Miss in Place is a philosophy that puts everything in its place. And consider this question: who would you ask for help? We've got 2 pictures of desks here, the person with the messy desk and the disorganization, or the person where everything is in place. Miss in Place is a philosophy that originated from the French culinary world. If you've ever seen a kitchen in the French culinary world, everything is perfectly clean, everything is in its place. The chef has actually created efficiencies by having all their tools and all their ingredients right where they're supposed to be. You bring that into your office and into your life. This teaches you efficiencies, make sure everything is organized in your place. When you're working on something, only take out what you need for that moment. It's an organization strategy to plan your days, stick to your focus, stick to your schedule. It's a very mindful way to work for those of us who are yoga practitioners, and time is valuable, so don't waste it. So it's an idea to slow down, to speed up, and have a more productive day. And with that, I am going to turn this over, I believe, back to Ryan.
Yeah, thanks again, Kelly.
Yep, not a problem.
Yep, so I attended Danny Cahill's session Thursday morning and really appreciate the energy he brought to it, especially for those of us who were networking into the wee hours. That was a good thing to start the day off with. And Danny Cahill, being a mentor to top producers, he had some important qualities to share. And he's uniquely positioned. He pointed out that top producers, they're instinctive. They actually can't tell you. They can't help you do what they do because they're not even aware of what they do. But Danny is, and so he shared that with us. First, they have an inner talk track that says that they're special, that they're destined to do great things. Second, driven by money. Third, their hyperbolic sense of urgency drives them to do 3 things. Number one, they avoid big companies. They're not going to get stuck in the quagmire there. 2, no post and hope behavior. And third, they do what's hard first thing in the morning. Once that's accomplished, the rest of their day is opened up. 4, their people reading skills, their people reading IQ, if you will, is at the Mensa level. Number 5, they don't close. Every communication is actually a constant nudge or encouragement in the desired direction. And 6 here, they have a beast mode. I really like this. He relates the idea to high-intensity interval training. Just like you can get better results from short bursts of incredibly demanding exercise, so too can you get superior results from focusing for short bursts in beast mode with a laser-like focus. So it's not about working longer hours and trying to stay on task from morning till night. It's about banging out 15 to 20 calls and then stepping away for a bit. So Danny made a great point here about attention being the most scarce resource in the world, and there was a lot of agreement in the room. So to avoid randomly wandering around social media throughout the day, you really need to schedule time for beast mode, all that laser-focused practice, and then time to walk away from that. And going on to the next slide here, these top performers are bleeders. They referred down, and he gave a great example of an effective LinkedIn messaging strategy I want to share here. Targeting an established employee and saying, hey, I'm not going after you. You obviously have a proven track record over 7 years or whatever. I'm sure you're happy where you are. I'm reaching you because you must be well networked there, and I need your help with this search. Really clever strategy. And top producers, they're asking strategic questions like, who is the most talented person you know that I should be aware of? Think about that. Instead of asking, do you know who's looking for work? And then getting some head scratching followed by probably the least desirable talent they know, you're actually getting someone to think about the most talented people in their network. These folks are specialists, and to truly be a specialist, you need 2 of these 4 fill categories checked off. So you've got function, like sales, industry, the level of person you're going at, or a specialist by location. So if you have 2 of those 4, you're a specialist, you're set for success. If you don't, then that's going to be a problem. LinkedIn's fooled a lot of recruiters into thinking they can search for anyone, but that illusion will not last. And on the last slide on this one, Danny talks a bit about how to use technology. He recommends using text for motion when you want to get somebody to take action and get moving, email for content, and he qualifies that by saying he never has his people send out an email that you have to scroll down to see part of. And that goes back to attention being a scarce resource. And third, call for persuasion. That's your opportunity to move someone in the right direction. And he made the statement, let's disconnect. Just talking about the over-reliance on LinkedIn, it's obviously a critical tool for every recruiter now. You can't take it away. But a drawback is that it offers fast access to some of the worst talent. The speed of the process is front-loaded, so you can identify talent quickly, but you'll find that the quality of candidates suffer if you over-rely on it. He pointed out that 83% of LinkedIn in-mails are never responded to. 40% of profiles out there have outright falsehoods, or they're fluffed in some sense of the word. And so although the front end, the sourcing, has never been easier in the history of recruiting with the fast access to talent, the back end has never been harder, the actual contacting, the actual placing. And so with that, in continuing on the topic of top performers, Brad, I believe you're up next with takeaways from Eric Gregg's session.
Thanks, Ryan. If you haven't seen Eric Gregg speak or any of his presentations, I encourage you to. He does a wonderful job comparing data from top-performing staffing firms and those that are underperforming and presenting it in a really compelling and engaging way. And one of the stories he told us really kind of set the tone for his whole presentation. And he talked about Amtrak back in the, I think it was late 70s or early 80s, and they were losing passengers by the boatload, or by the train load in this case. And they said, you know what, we need to do something. We're going to change our marketing and advertising agency. So they narrowed it down to 3 different companies. And 2 of the companies, they came into Amtrak's corporate offices. They did everything that they could to woo these key executives. They put on these nice, polished presentations, took them out to 5-star dinners, did everything they possibly could to wow them to win this account. And the real story here is the third agency. So the third agency said, you know what, we're not going to come out to your offices. Why don't you come down to our offices, and we'll show you why you're going to choose us. The Amtrak executive said, okay, yeah, we'll come down to your offices. And they showed up, and what happened was they walked in the door, and the waiting room was disorganized. It had old newspapers on the table, ratty chairs. The carpet was dirty. The receptionist that was there was on the phone, obviously on a personal call, didn't even acknowledge the people for about 5 minutes. Finally, she kind of looked over and said, hey, you know what, we'll be with you in just a little bit. And they sat there for another 15, 20 minutes. Finally, they started rumbling. They were about to get up and leave. The receptionist popped her head out and said, oh, hey, you know what, we're just about ready. Sorry for the delay. Why don't you just go in the meeting room and we'll be right in. And they went into the meeting room, and as they were walking in, the floors were sticky. from Pop. There was an empty pizza box on the table. They waited another 5 or 6 minutes. Nobody came in. Finally, they're getting up to leave, and they're walking out the front door, and the account executive runs out and says, "Hey guys, come on back in." And they said, "You know what? Don't even bother. This has been a horrible experience. We're not using you." And he looked at them and he said, "You sure are going to use us?" And they said, "Why in the world would we use you? You gave us the worst experience, and we didn't even get into the presentation." And he said, "You're going to use us because that's the exact experience that you give your passengers." And it really resonated, because if you think about it, many staffing firms out there are giving a similar experience. They're so caught up in filling client orders that they're ignoring candidates. They're not communicating with them effectively. They're not giving them the time they deserve. And in a candidate shortage, how could you do that to your most sought after resource? So the biggest problem, and I guess the biggest lesson here, is that staffing firms need to pay attention. Oftentimes we're so caught up in the day-to-day that we don't see the harm that we're doing to our business, and we need to take a step back and think about what the real issues are. Talk to our clients, talk to our candidates, have candid conversations about the real issues so that we can fix those issues and provide better service. Now, Eric went on to share some other interesting statistics. So a lot of his presentation was talking about your brand image. So if you don't know what your brand means, you don't know what your brand image wants to be, then it really means nothing. And then he got into what makes people choose different staffing firms. And this is an interesting statistic. 4 out of 5 people who get a referral, once they get that referral for a staffing firm, what are they doing? They're going online to vet that firm. They're looking at your website. If your website doesn't give a good impression, they're not going to pick up the phone and call you. They're looking at reviews. That's the second most trusted source. So what are people out there saying about you? If you're out there ignoring candidates and those candidates are voicing their opinion online, and your potential client reads that, they're going to say, okay, this staffing firm doesn't care about their candidates. They don't care about their employees. Why should we use them? Eric also introduced two of the biggest complaints that potential buyers and candidates reported about staffing firms. And they said, number 1, they're pushy, and number 2, they misrepresent the people that they're trying to place. Okay, don't misrepresent your candidates. If they don't have all of the skills, be upfront with the client and communicate effectively. Tell the client that you simply can't find anyone in this candidate market that has all of the skills, but we found a person that has most of them. And what are the 2 differentiators of high-performing staffing firms? Number 1, it was remarkable people and process. It's not price. And number 2, it's staffing firms that take responsibility. Okay, all too many staffing firms out there or service providers will say, you know what, hey, that's not my job duty. That's not my responsibility. The firms that take the opportunity to show an exceptional experience, to answer questions that might not fall under their domain or even the service that they're contracted to provide, those are the firms that set themselves apart and make more money in the long run. And then last statistic I wanted to share here is that 78% of talent will accept less than the minimum salary if there's positive reviews about the employer. So employer branding is extremely important, both for your clients and for you. So go to Glassdoor, go to Indeed, go to Yelp, go to Facebook. Look at what people are saying about you. If they're not sharing good experiences, why in the world would anybody work with you, either employees or clients? So a lot of lessons here about controlling your brand image and online brand awareness. And Kelly, I know there were some other key points that Eric pointed out.
Yep, I also attended Eric's session, and as Brad said, if you haven't seen him, definitely go see him next time you have a chance. Two of the points that Brad made were remarkable people and process. So how does that really affect a top-performing firm? High-growth firms report turnover 75% less of the time of their internal staff. So what are you doing to keep your staff? A couple things. Key issues driving turnover are feeling that they're underpaid, your staff is feeling that their immediate manager isn't doing enough, and they don't receive performance feedback. So let's take that. What does a satisfied employee look like? There's feeling of optimism. They enjoy working with their peers. There's opportunities for growth and recognition. And one way to do that is actually to help your employees get to know each other outside of work and create loyalty to each other. If you've got a branch office, it's the loyalty to the people inside the coworkers inside that office that are going to keep them with your company. And finally, from a client perspective, a client prospect is 22% more likely to take a meeting with you if you can provide data that directly impacts their company. Are you providing educational materials? Are you providing hiring statistics, hiring trends in their area, in their company, in their industry? That'll help boost your meetings with prospects. And from here, we are turning it over to
Me.
David.
Thanks,
You're
Kelly.
up next.
Yeah, and before I jump to the next presentation, we don't usually do a lot of sales pitches on our Lunch with Haley webinars, but I do want to point out one thing. Brad was just illustrating Eric's statistics on the importance of reputation management and checking out your reviews on all the social review sites like Glassdoor and Yelp, etc. Many of you may know that reputation management is a service that we pioneered just about a year ago in the staffing industry, and if you'd like to know more about what we can do, please contact us. We can make a huge impact in those positive reviews, in gathering testimonials, and in creating a brand where particularly the candidates see your firm as different than somebody else. So, end the sales pitch, but I would like to just point out we can help there. The next session was one that Victoria Kenward from our firm attended, and it was by Tom Gimbel, the CEO of the LaSalle Network, on spotting future managers and developing leaders. So I didn't attend this directly, but I'm going to do my best to share what Vicki learned at this session. As everyone in the staffing industry knows, it's critical to hire for fit. I like that Tom said, you hire people you like, and he said, use the airplane test. Essentially ask yourself the question, would I sit next to this person for 4 hours on a flight? If I wouldn't, I shouldn't be hiring them to work in my firm. And also remember that people are going to imitate the manager. So if you have a weak manager, you're going to have a weak team. If you have a manager you don't like, you're going to have a team that you don't like. In terms of managing people's expectations, as a leader, Tom said, you are accountable to holding people accountable for being accountable. In other words, accountability starts at the top, and you have to hold people's feet to the fire and clearly set and manage their expectations. Write them down, and those expectations should vary by salary, tenure, and functional area. He also talked about compensation and the inherent conflict between how employers and employees view the world, and use an analogy from the world of sports that the professional athletes think they should be compensated based on what they did last season, and the managers want to pay them based on what they're going to accomplish next season. Well, really, when you're thinking about compensation plans for your team, what happened last season is by and large irrelevant. Your ability to pay them is dependent on what they produce next season, and you want your compensation plans to be aligned with future growth. Another secret to nobody on today's call is that culture is absolutely critical in the staffing industry, but internal culture is very tough because of the inherent conflict between sales and recruiting. Sales brings the orders in, and if the recruiters can't fill them, then the salespeople think the recruiters aren't doing their jobs, and then when the recruiters get the jobs that are for these crazy purple squirrel candidates, they think the salespeople don't know what they're doing. So as a manager, your challenge is to create harmony, help put each of the main constituents in the other's shoes so you can have a culture where people are working together. We also talked about the fact that we're seeing more and more remote workers, and that really is detrimental to a strong culture. Visibility promotes culture, and the more time your team members spend out on their own, the weaker your internal culture is likely to be. He talked about external hiring versus internal hiring, and I like this perspective, is that external hires are people who are brought in to either grow revenue and or develop internal staff. Internal hires fill a need, but they're also done to provide a career path. So we talked about really balancing when and where you hire externally versus internally based on the needs of the role, the capabilities of the organization, and your needs to support your internal people. If you do hire internally, though, you have to be willing to make a real investment in training people the skills they're going to need to go to the next level. The classic example is the sales rep who kills it and then is a terrible sales manager. Those are different skill sets. If you're not willing to invest in training for the next level, look to hire externally. And he had a whole set of rules on what makes a great manager. Great managers build relationships and people trust them. They're assertive and drive outcomes. They motivate their teams. They're consistent in what they do and explain why they do it. They make decisions based on productivity, not politics. They hold people accountable. They care about people in their organization. They have a real passion for the company mission. They communicate and are transparent, and they invest their time in people and growth. And the bottom line is, if you're not doing that stuff, your people quit the manager. They don't quit your company. And the last couple of points about developing management skills, you have to teach people how to coach, how to write, how to hold meetings, things that as a leader may be fundamental to you, but are learned skills for others. You have to teach people how to think like a visionary and how to communicate vision to the people who report to them. You also talked about the value of B players, and we tend to always want to hire A players because company growth is a direct result of hiring A players. They raise the bar for everybody, but B players are essential too. Sometimes B players become A players, and sometimes B players are essential because they make A players stronger. The only players you really don't want are those with the bad attitudes that you can get rid of. All right, Kelly, coming back to you for the next session.
Yep. We've talked a lot about internal management and internal staff. The next session, Differentiation, Are You Ready for 2016, really talks about clients and candidates. And first thing we want to take a look at is the attraction and awareness. How do they find you? For clients, 61% come from referrals, 43% from online search, and 28% come from direct sales. For candidates, the awareness of your firm, 30% come from a recruiter calling them, and 80% come from referrals. What does that mean to you? Actually, you want to take active brand management. You want to actively manage the messages that are going out through clients and candidates. 27% of your 27% of your clients will refer someone without actually prompting. An additional 57% will share if they are prompted. So do you have a way for clients and candidates to tell their story? Do you have a way online for them to refer others to you? David talked about our reputation management, and we're just going to do another hint. You can ask us how we can help with both of those. Additionally, with the candidate experience, perceived versus actual, the Amtrak example is a great example of what is the actual experience your candidates are receiving when they come to your firm. From the point of application, they want flexibility in the application process. They want the ability to come back and complete your application. If they don't have the ability to do this, 6 out of 10 candidates will actually drop off. So you're losing 60% of candidates there. You can simplify the application process online or simply build a transparency. It may take 45 minutes to complete the application. Tell your candidates that ahead of time. One company just put a little button, little blurb on top of the application, said please allow 45 minutes of your time to complete this, and their online applications increased. Throughout the entire candidate process, build your transparencies. Set your candidate expectations. Be responsive. Candidates expect auto responses when they fill out an online application, but they're actually, 67% of job seekers are actually expecting a phone call as well. And stay connected throughout the entire process. Did you call your candidate on the first day of an assignment? Do you touch base with them before the end of assignment? Temporary workers begin looking for their next assignment the first week of their current assignment. And 3 out of 4 of them are reporting that their staffing company isn't even contacting them before the end of the current assignment. So keep in touch, keep them engaged, and keep them working for you. And then from a mobile standpoint, and we'll talk about mobile a little later as well, but 73% of your candidates will leave your site if you don't have a mobile optimized application process. And another option to reach your candidates mobilely is once they're on board, email and text campaigns to market upcoming opportunities to your candidate database. So take a look at your process from what you perceive it to be to what your candidates are actually experiencing. And I think at this point, I'm throwing it back to Brad.
Thanks, Kelly. This presentation focused on SEO and your online brand, and one of the reasons I attended was not necessarily to learn anything new, but just to gauge what others in the staffing industry were learning or what questions they had. And what struck me was that a lot of companies, especially in the room, weren't doing a lot of the basics. Okay, so they weren't including keywords in their page titles and keywords in their copy. They weren't adding content continually onto their site. They weren't doing things to build inbound links, and it really struck me, and I thought to myself, boy, we need to do a better job of educating the industry about what to do. And I want to remind everybody on this call that if you do have questions about search engine optimization, we have some great resources. We have an ebook that walks you through the basics, exactly what you need to do on your website to make it search engine friendly. We have a lot of great webinars in our library, and this is all available for free on our website. So if you do have questions about SEO, take a look at those resources. Let us know. We're happy to help. But during the presentation, some common things popped up. Number one is looking at your entire brand online and making sure it's consistent across the board. So what does that mean? That means looking at your Google listings. Okay, make sure that your listings are all current on Google Maps. And it gets down to spelling out the words suite or road across the board to make sure that your listings are consistent. It's one of those small factors that Google looks at when determining the relevance and search engine friendliness of your website. So look at all those listings. If you need help, there's services out there like Yext, and there's others that will actually go out and help you correct those listings. Big component of SEO is measuring results. So making sure that your website has Google Analytics installed, seeing how you're performing, seeing what pages perform well, seeing where you're getting traffic, and then filling in the blanks, seeing what you can do better to drive more traffic and drive more targeted traffic, the traffic that's going to convert into applications or staffing orders. And then finally, another great reminder is when selecting keywords, focus on ones that you can actually own, that you can actually rank well for. And one of the big pitfalls we see, and the speaker saw too, was that many staffing firms out there are trying to rank well for jobs. Okay? You're never going to overthrow Monster, Career Builder, Indeed, and the dozens of other job boards out there that have hundreds of thousands of pages dedicated to the word jobs. So don't try. Look at other words like opportunities, career, employment agencies. Focus on words that you actually have a chance to own. So again, just some good basic reminders, and if you want some more in-depth information, we have some wonderful resources on our website. David, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Brad. One of the sessions I went to was a speaker from outside the industry, Jill Conrath, who talked about how to speed up the sales cycle. And I love some of her advice. When we prospect, we tend to be on cruise control, which is her nice way of saying we've all got bad habits and we just keep doing them because it's the path of least resistance. We do what we know. However, she said in today's world, it takes 8 to 10 attempts to reach a prospect, and the average sales rep only makes 2. And we're trying to reach people, clients who are completely overwhelmed, clients who think salespeople are boring, and just they're crazy busy people who think differently because they're crazy busy. They're all being asked to accomplish more with fewer resources. And so when you interrupt them and say, can I just have 15 minutes? Or I'd love to talk to you about your staffing needs, they don't care. They find you boring. What Jill said is if you want to shorten the sales cycle, you have to do 3 things. Number 1, simplify what you're selling, saying, and offering. In other words, make it easier for the person to digest whatever you're telling them. Make your service offering easier. Don't have complex rules. Make your email short, like Danny Cahill suggested, nothing that makes you have to scroll. You want to look for trigger events that would drive someone to use or change staffing providers. So what are trigger events? Trigger events can be things like dealing with the Affordable Care Act or dealing with the skills gap. It could be a merger or acquisition in their business. It could be a competitor that's struggling, a supplier they have currently that might be in trouble. It could be management changes in their organization. It could be last quarter's results were above or below expectations for their firm. It could be new strategic initiatives that they publicly announced, relocation of their business, or competitive moves in their industry or in your industry. It could even be things like natural disasters. The idea is trigger events motivate immediate action. And when you see a trigger event, or when you're monitoring companies by having Google alerts or to see these trigger events, it's a reason to reach out and communicate. And when you're reaching out and communicate, change your messaging. The typical sales message has the exact following structure, and it's instantly deletable. Your introduction is your name and your company, then your positioning, we specialize in. The reason I'm calling to learn about something. And then we close with, I'd really like to schedule a meeting. Every HR manager, every executive deletes that in an instant. What Jill said we must do with our messaging is, number 1, instantly build credibility, either ideally having a referral, sharing that you have experience with similar clients, or highlighting research you've done about that specific company. Then we've got to pique people's curiosity by sharing industry trends, a relevant success story, or tempting people with ideas that could make an impact in their job and their company. And then you close confidently with something as simple as, let's set up a time to talk. So if you have the building credibility first, then you pique the curiosity, then you close credibly, you will get greater response to your messaging, and you will shorten your sales cycle. All right, and the last session we went to was one on hot technology, and our COO and CTO both attended this one. So I'm going to share just some highlights of what they saw. A few new products that are out there that you should be aware of. Bullhorn had a product called Pulse, which is designed to give you quick insight into the health of relationships, figuring out what clients are engaged because they buy more. Monster had released a product to do social job ads using Twitter campaigns to help you better distribute your jobs and use social media, specifically Twitter, to find candidates. eStaff 365 was showing off their paperless onboarding and compliance, and we're talking a lot of people that want to go paperless. They're one company that does it and knows the staffing industry. Joberate is a company that scores candidates based on social media activities related to their job search. It's sort of like a big data solution to figure out who's looking for work and which candidates are worth your time. Kernel is a company that CareerBuilder just acquired a majority stake in, and they do multilingual resume parsing with semantic search, meaning it doesn't have to be an exact keyword match, but they can figure out who's a good match based on the kinds of things you're looking for. And they're a lead generation tool that can work with your ATS. And the last one they wanted to highlight was called the Fireside Bar. This is a really cool tool that syncs job boards and VMS with your ATS using a Firefox or Chrome browser plugin. The idea is that it reduces data entry and it saves what you spend on getting data out of resume data banks, because when you have the sidebar active, if you're looking at a candidate, before you download their resume from Monster, Fire can tell you if you've already got it in your ATS or somewhere else, saving you the cost of getting the data a second time. So just a few highlights from the tech panel. All right, just to give everybody a forewarning, we've got probably about 15 to 20 minutes left of content. I understand we're at an hour right now, but we did not want to cut this webinar short and ignore great content that was at Staffing World 2015. We do understand that people have to get back to work, so once again, we are recording everything, and it will be available on the Lunch with Haley website next week. With that said, Brad, we had fun this year. One of the new things was the Idea Lab. You want to talk a little bit about our lab?
Certainly, David. One thing that we learned from the lab is that we needed a bigger space. We had about 35 seats in a small room, and we filled those 35 seats about 10 minutes before the presentation, and then we had standing room, and then it even spilled out into the hall, so it was an awesome turnout. So one thing that told us is that people still have a lot of questions about social media and really what to do, and our presentation focused on exactly what to do. And you want to be doing this because inbound leads have now overtaken outbound sales activities. So 40% of companies are reporting that inbound marketing is the leading source of their leads, and only 20% report that outbound sales activities are the leading source of their leads. And what's really key here is that inbound marketing is way cheaper to get a lead. Outbound sales activities for a medium-sized business cost about 3 times as much per lead as inbound marketing. So inbound can be extremely effective and drive really targeted leads for you. One of the keys that we focused on was about measuring social activities. So looking at all the key metrics, data, and analysis that each social platform provides and your website tracking like Google Analytics provides, and making more educated decisions about where to focus your time and effort. And then we outlined a plan for spending just 22 minutes a day to have an absolutely amazing social media strategy. And we can't go into all of that today, but if anybody would like that plan, we keyed in on specifically what to do on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook each and every day to have a great presence. Let us know and we can get that plan over to you.
Yeah, best would be just shoot an email after today's webinar to info@haleymarketing.com, and if you ask for the slides from the Social is a Science webinar, we'll be happy to share them with you. All right, Brad, talk about the next new thing for you.
Yeah, a very new thing is that I didn't get to go to many sessions this year. I went to maybe 2 or 3 sessions, and in the past I try to go to as many sessions as possible, but what we found this year is that pre-show marketing really works. And what I mean by that is we reached out ahead of time to the people that we really wanted to connect with, some of our existing clients, some prospects we wanted to do work with, and many others. And my whole time there was booked with appointments back to back, and it was great because one of the best things about Staffing World is learning what works for other staffing and recruiting industry leaders, learning what didn't work, and then kind of bringing that back for our clients and sharing it on webinars like this. So one of our goals is to go there and we ask and we listen, we think about the biggest challenges that our industry faces. And one of the great takeaways is just sitting down with one of our clients. They said, you know what, one of our biggest challenges is recruiting. Surprise, surprise. But we sat down and we brainstormed over 50 different ways that they could recruit therapists. They're in healthcare staffing in allied health. And 50 different ways that they could recruit these therapists that they weren't using right now. And that came from just sitting down and brainstorming. So these conversations end up having a ton of value. And again, just like our presentation and our 22-minute plan on social, if you want some of these ideas for recruiting that are a little untraditional, be happy to share those. And in fact, I'll probably write a blog post about that in the next day or so. And then the other thing we look for is repeatable success. David shared the story earlier about that staffing firm down in Texas that uses Facebook almost exclusively to recruit. And that's one of those repeatable success stories. So if you're in a small market or you're in a niche industry market, look at building a strong social following and a strong social network. And then you can drastically reduce your recruiting costs and use that social network to really drive higher level candidates and drive your recruitment costs lower. And internally, look for repeatable success. So look at what worked in the past and repeat it.
Thanks, Brad. And yes, not only are you doing a blog post on recruiting, I believe our next Idea Club newsletter will also be on recruiting ideas. So lots more good stuff coming on this topic. And then our lunch with Haley in December is also going to be on recruiting. We hear a challenge and we do our best to provide good ideas to respond. All right, before we wrap up today's webinar, we've got two last things that we want to share. First, we want to congratulate our 2015 Staffing World Voice Award winners. These awards go to recognize leaders in communicating in the staffing industry. And our creative team and our clients kicked butt this year. We had 7 different winners in a variety of categories, and let me just kind of highlight who won this year. We want to congratulate StaffX for their win on a website. They wanted a fresh, easy to navigate new site to gather job applications and attract more clients. And they used one of our starter sites as the base model. They were able to incorporate friendly imagery, simple to read copy, prominent calls to action to make for a great new image. And as you can see on the screen, a responsive design that works well on any device. And as you heard everybody mention earlier, with mobile being so important, a website that allows your candidates to search and apply jobs through every device is no longer just a good idea, it's essential. We also want to congratulate Real Street, who not only won an award for their new website, but they won the Best in Class Voice Award as the best website for their size business entered into this year's Voice Awards. They came to us with the goal to create a wow, to do something that we had never done before, to push us to the limits. We had a lot of fun working with them. Their website features tons of interactive components, things like not just the ability to search jobs, but jobs being fed throughout the website, testimonials being dynamically fed throughout the website, and even as you see on screen, a talent showcase where they are using the website to skill market the people that they are attempting to place to help provide faster placements for their candidates. They use it as a recruiting tool and more placements for them, so it also is a business development tool. So congratulations to Real Street. If you get a chance, there's no way on a slide here for us to show what this site does. Check out realstreetstaffing.com. Awesome new site. Next up, Pride Staff, which we won an award with them for their local microsites. So we do websites for a number of their offices to feature what they're doing in specific geographic markets. They have a terrific corporate website that already attracts more than 1 million people a year, but we want to help make them even stronger in specific geographic markets where they face a lot of competition. They provide localized employment data and outstanding career resources while positioning Pride Staff specifically as an employer of choice to the local workforce. And the added benefit is they're another way for Pride Staff to generate more applicants and more job orders. We want to congratulate Strategic IT Staffing, a best-in-class winner for their social media marketing. They wanted to dramatically improve their social media presence. They didn't have a strong presence when they came to us, and they said, let's do something great. And we worked together on our Social Pro service to find better ways to capture people's attention on social sites and drive more traffic to Strategic IT's website. The idea was to build off of their educational content in their blog and a mix of advice for the consultants they place and employers, and then combine it with attention-grabbing graphics and daily regular social sharing. The program resulted in a 1,036% increase in traffic to their website from social. Another winner in the social media category was Cowork Staffing, who won a Voice Award for their Social Pro program. They wanted to create a really strong brand on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and YouTube. Again, using educational content, bold visuals, and daily sharing to drive more traffic to their website. For Coworks, we saw website traffic increase by 330% with contact page conversion rate of 12%, meaning 1 out of every 8 people who came to the site took an action to engage with Coworks. Social media, we're finding when you get people from social to your website, it is the highest converting web traffic you can get. We want to congratulate Team One Medical, who's got a really fun website that shows off a lot of their performance statistics. You can see some illustrations of them on the screen. They wanted to be positioned as a premier healthcare staffing company in the Houston area. So we wanted to highlight not just the fact that they do nurse staffing, because lots of nurse staffing companies have great pictures of people, but really that from a credibility standpoint, they've got an amazing track record of performance, and using statistics and graphics, small infographics, really help tell Team One Medical's story in a very convincing way and help them separate their website from all the other medical staffing firms to win this Voice Award. And finally, we want to congratulate Advanced Staffing Solution, who came to us wanting to update their identity. They had a very successful organization that had an identity that hadn't been updated in a very long time. So we worked with them to come up with a new logo, new color scheme, and then carry that through all of their collateral materials in their website to create a cohesive brand identity, cohesive messaging to better position them in the markets they serve. So want to say congrats again to all of our Voice Award winners, and we are going to wrap up today's presentation with the lessons the team has learned. So let's quickly, guys, everybody's going to get a chance now to share their lessons as we wrap up today's webinar. Ryan, you're up first.
Great, thanks, David. So just quickly, acting like a recruiter and thinking like a marketer. I got a lot from a LinkedIn session here, and if you're a recruiter using InMail, you need to treat every touch point as an opportunity to brand yourself. Think about what happens next after you send it. And we were told when they visit your profile, second step, they go to your website. Third, they view your open job opportunities, and 17% of the time they reply back. If you're a recruiter doing this, simple things like having a professional photo, customizing the headline with your LinkedIn job title, adding rich media that keeps visitors on your profile 10 times longer than if you don't have any, like videos or ebooks. Those are all vital opportunities to make an impression in a world where attention is really the most scarce resource. And also, one size does not fit all. I moderated a roundtable for social media strategies on Wednesday. It was really enjoyable to learn how different every staffing firm's experience was with social media. Just as someone from a tech staffing company shared their totally valid perspective that they felt their audience was not on Facebook at all, the person next to them would share an experience as a light industrial firm in rural Georgia where, like David's example earlier of the person in Texas with 10,000 likes, that whole county in Georgia knew if they were looking for work, they'd best be following that staffing firm's Facebook page. So understand the right tool for the job based on your unique audience. That's paramount. And I'll pass it on to Paula.
Thanks, Ryan. When it comes to using social media as a true sales and recruiting tool, believe me, it really does work. You should know that the leading staffing firms are using social media to their advantage. Research into the staffing industry shows that an overwhelming amount of agencies are still undervaluing and underutilizing a tool that really should be at the forefront of your strategy. So you need to get your team to buy in. And sharing content on your company pages is really important also. But having that content then shared through personal channels is very critical. Make sure that your whole team understands the importance of social media, and every day that they begin to share content that is published to your company social accounts, through your personal channels. And not only does this drive traffic back to your website at a significant rate, but it also positions those individuals as thought leaders and experts on given topics. If you're not doing it already, you need to get on the ball. Up to Maggie now for your points.
Thanks, Paula. So my first key takeaway is not to fear change. As the industry changes, it's important for us to adopt these changes with our day-to-day activities. For example, in 1999, the internet changed the face of recruiting, but it only changed how it's done. It didn't hurt the industry. The current fear today is artificial intelligence. Will robots take jobs away? And the answer here is no, according to Danny Cahill. They streamline some processes while at the same time creating new jobs to manage those processes. Times change, and it's essential that our industry changes with them. And my second takeaway is about video. As you may already know, YouTube is the #2 search engine in the world. So if people are searching on YouTube, why aren't you answering their questions with video? A fun fact that I learned is that 500 years of YouTube videos are watched every day on Facebook. There's a huge opportunity here. Don't miss it. And I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
Thanks, Maggie. My first takeaway was mobile, mobile, mobile. We've been talking about it for years, but what does it actually mean? Now we've got some hard numbers to look at. 73% of applicants will leave a non-mobile optimized site. And that doesn't mean that it just renders well on a mobile device. It has to work well on a mobile device as well. And 57% of your audience will develop a negative perception of your company if your site isn't mobile optimized. So think about it. How does your site compare? Do you have a mobile application solution? If you don't, you're losing a large number of potential candidates. And my next takeaway was the millennials. They are 90 million strong in the workforce, but what does that mean? Well, it turns out that they're doing more than making us Gen Xers feel old. They're actually changing the look of the workforce. They're doing more than changing the look of the workforce. They're actually changing the values, the perks over paychecks. They want their jobs to have meaning and purpose and make an impact. But how does this apply to staffing? Well, from a candidate standpoint, what do your job descriptions say? Are you still focusing on the duties? What about the perks? And what about the benefits of the job? Not just the hard benefits, but what purpose? What is the purpose behind the job? And for your internal openings, there's an intrinsic value to the staffing industry of helping people find jobs. What better way to attract the millennials to your internal positions than focusing on that purpose behind the staffing industry? And now Brad's up next.
Thanks. So one of my key takeaways is that there's still a lot of confusion about SEO, about social media, about online marketing in general. But the firms that get it, the firms that have a good understanding and have a good strategy in place, have a huge competitive advantage. So if you're still unsure about how to optimize your website, how to use social as a tool, ask. We're working with over 250 staffing firms across the country and worldwide, in fact. If you have questions, ask us. We've seen it before. We've ran into these challenges before. We can share case studies, and we're happy to guide you in the right direction to make sure that you're using social, search, and other inbound tools to drive sales and help with your recruiting challenges. And the next takeaway is pre-show marketing works. I mentioned it earlier. I was booked with meetings the entire time. And the lesson here is before you go to a networking event, before you attend a career fair or display at a trade show, do pre-show marketing. Get the attendee list ahead of time. Send email. Do direct mail. You can upload that list into Facebook and run targeted ads to those people that are going to be attending. Look for all the opportunities you can to get your name in front of those people ahead of time, set meetings ahead of time, and make that event worth your time and worth the expense. And David, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks. I'm going to share some feedback from Rick, our Chief Technology Officer, and not surprising, his first takeaway is just how much technology is changing the fabric of the staffing industry. This was Rick's first time to attend Staffing World, and he was just amazed by the impact of social media, mobile applications, the changes in applicant tracking systems and VMS, job boards. The tools are growing like crazy, faster than ever, and not showing any signs of slowing. And that means the velocity of staffing is increasing. It kind of goes back to one of that earlier keynote. People expect us to do things faster, from sourcing to using VMS, using job boards, finding ways to onboard more efficiently, testing candidates, communicating with candidates. Technology is enabling us to make staffing more efficient, more effective, to respond faster. But if your firm wants to remain competitive, you've got to find ways to embrace this in every aspect of your business, in sales, in your marketing, in your recruiting, in your candidate and client communications, if you want to keep up. Next up is Vicki, who is our COO, and Vicki has not been to Staffing World in a long time, so she was there 10 years ago, and she was just amazed at how far the industry's come since her last Staffing World. More vendors, more sessions, and really she was very impressed with the quality of the content. If the people on today's call, if you haven't been to Staffing World in a while, if you've never been, go to San Diego next year. Get involved. Bring a couple of staff members so you can get into more sessions. One of the biggest challenges is there's just too much to cover in the 3 days that you're there. And what was really nice, Vicki saw, is that there was a lot of talk about how to improve the industry as a whole, and it's one place we all come together and we look for the things that are for the good of our industry. Second takeaway, related to Rick's, is that technology is playing a huge role in a staffing company's success. If you're not investing in technology regularly, you're going to have a hard time competing for all the same reasons that Rick noted in his takeaways. And finally, Vicki noted that staffing is cyclical. She found it very interesting that everybody this year was talking about recruiting. Vicki has been in and around the staffing industry for 20 plus years, and she said it's fun to watch the cycles because the industry tends to be very reactive to we need candidates, we need clients, we need candidates, we need clients. This year it's all about recruiting. Next year is it going to be all about job orders again? Because the industry is so cyclical, we're always going to see candidate shortages, usually just preceding a downturn. And we have to think about continuing to build relationships and market to clients even when we're in a time where we desperately need candidates. And likewise, in a time where candidates are easy to find, we still have to build relationships and market to candidates so we can attract the best of the best to our firm. It's continually balancing communications with both sides that enables you to survive the cycles in this industry. And finally, my takeaways to wrap up today's webinar. Number one, to make a conference a success, get out in front and don't follow the herd. And what I mean by that is, Brad mentioned the pre-show marketing, but we have, at every show we attend, to make a very deliberate effort to think about how to get onto people's agendas before they show up. If you're going to go to a conference, a networking event, find ways to get onto people's agendas before they show up. Once they arrive at the conference, it's too late. You can't get their time. You need to get in front of everybody, and don't follow the herd by just doing the same things everybody else is doing. We had countless people mention to us, everybody sent me an email. You're the only one that sent a really interesting direct mail package, and it got my attention. So dare to be different. Second thing is a very personal observation. Build your company around your team, not yourself. Brad mentioned this is the first Staffing World he's been to where he couldn't go to the sessions. Well, I had the opposite experience. This is the first Staffing World I've been to in probably 15 years where I could go to sessions. Because our team is so incredible, we are at the point now that every client is happier talking to them than me. We have a great team. And because of this, our business has a stronger ability to grow because it's not dependent on me, the leader, being the face of the organization. It's dependent on a team effort. Same in your business. If you want to grow, you have to build systems and processes around your team and not around individual leaders. And lastly, make the best use of every minute. You can sleep once you get home. I saw a lot of people at Staffing World, attendees, vendors, who waste time. They don't join people for breakfast. They show up late. They only sit with people they know. They don't plan their schedules a day or more in advance. They don't break their team up and divide and conquer the sessions and then share notes with one another. They don't enjoy the entertainment. They go to bed very early. It's an opportunity even to embrace your competitors. We had great discussions with some people we directly compete with because sometimes they're partners. Sometimes a competitor can do things you can't, and you want to know when is the right time to refer one another. You can get sleep once you get home, and if you make the best use of a conference, whether it's Staffing World and you're there to learn, or whether it's a conference and you're there to sell, you will get tremendous return on your investment. And with that said, I hope everyone enjoyed today's presentation, and thank you to all the people who have stayed with us right to the end. Staffing World is a huge event next year in San Diego, so we hope to see you there. And we hope to see you next month at our Lunch with Haley, December 17th, as we get ready for Christmas with some ideas to recruit more candidates now. And we're going to look at strategies for both active and passive job seekers, particularly some of the lower level positions where it doesn't make sense to direct recruit. We're going to look at strategies to getting more response to your marketing efforts. From everybody at Haley Marketing Group and for everybody on today's call, thank you all very much for being part of today's Lunch with Haley.